How's it going, y'all? Ryan De La Garza here with another Desmos build along. And in this one, we're going to be looking at adding sentence stems to your activities using the initial text sync as well as the action button in the timeSincePress sync. So let me show you what this is going to look like when everything's said and done. So here we have a graph, right? We want to describe the rate of change, and we want to give the students a little bit of support to help kind of get things started. So pressing this button, boom, now all of a sudden we have some text as the number of tickets increases by, and we're getting them rolling, getting the ideas churning, right? So how do we add this into our activities? It's actually super easy. So if you want to build along with me, link is down in the description. You can click it, and on the first screen, you can build along. I'll be building on the second screen right now in this video. In the third screen, you're going to see a completed version with some detailed notes in the computation layer, so you can really dive in and refresh yourself on what's going on. So let's start off here by naming our components, right? First thing we want to do, I'm going to name this graph 2. I'm going to call this note 2. Whoops. And I'm using 2 just because I'm on the second screen. Helps me keep track of things. But you can name them whatever you want to name them. Oh, not note 2 down at the bottom. We're going to call this input 2 because that's where they're putting their text. Now, I said we're going to use the timeSincePress, right? Anytime we want to have a button like this one, we're going to need to add an action button to our screen. So I'm going to come over and add a button, and I'm going to put it underneath the text box, and I'm going to call this Act 2, short for action, but that's just what I like to do there. So now we have all the pieces set up that we want to have for our screen to work. So I'm going to come into my computation layer for the text box because that's where I want the sentence stem to pop in. So let's click into this computation layer. And I'm going to start by putting a variable that I'm going to call sentence stem. And I'm going to put this at the very top. And we're going to define this. And this is where we're going to set up what our sentence stem is. So I'm going to say the sentence stem is as the number of tickets, not tickers, tickets increases by ... And that's going to be my sentence stem. Now I'm going to leave it right there. The nice part about putting that variable at the top is now, instead of putting this whole sentence down later on in our script, all I have to do is put this variable right here. I'm also going to make another variable, and I'm going to make an act variable, and I'm going to make that equal to act 2. What this does is says I can just say act now, and as many times as I want to use that in my script, it's going to know I'm talking about action button 2, which is what we named our action button, that act 2 piece. This is going to be super helpful if you go and duplicate this on multiple screens, because now you can copy and paste everything below, and the only thing you have to edit are these top 2 lines for your sentence stem and then the action button that you're using. Everything else will stay exactly the same. So let's dive into what this code is going to look like. I want to use the initial text sync. So this is important because initial text means that it's going to start off, but students can go in and adjust it and edit it. And what I want it to do is I want to use sentence stem, right? So I'm going to just put sentence stem right here. Now let's check out what this looks like. Just as is, if I preview this, notice I got my sentence stem in there automatically. I have this button, but nothing really happens with that button, but I do see the sentence stem. So we're starting off. So the next piece I want to add in is that button action. So just to recap right here, let's zoom in and see what we did. If I look at this, I created a variable called sentence stem, and that's where I put the text of my stem. I made an action button and variable that talks about my action button. Then I used the initial text sync, and I said I want to call up that text that I said earlier was called sentence stem, and I want that to be displayed. So that's what we're doing. I'm making an initial text using my sentence stem variable. But like we said, we want to add the button aspect into it, right? Like Dan Meyer says, you can always add, but you can never take away. So if I start with it, we may kind of rob students of the way that they're thinking about things. So we're going to come in and use our conditional. So I'm going to make a new line here, and I'm going to say when, I'm going to put a space so it'll give me the predictive pieces that Desmos built into their CL. I'm going to say when act, and now just act because we're referring to our action button because we called it act up here. And I'm going to say when the timeSincePress is greater than 0, I want it to equal sentence stem, right? So I can leave that there. I'm going to hit a new line. I'm going to say otherwise double quotations. So let's zoom in and let me break down what's happening here. So what we essentially said is I want to create an initial text that's going to fit inside my text box. Now, when the action button has been pressed, so remember that button, whenever you press it, it kicks off a timer. When that's been pressed, I want it to be the text from my sentence stem that we defined at the top. Otherwise, which means if it hasn't been pressed, I want it to just be blank. Double quotations, nothing's in there. So that's what we're doing with this initial text piece. So let's check this out and let's see how it works. I come to preview, I see nothing in my box, press try it, and boom, now we have our button. Right? So great, it's all working exactly like we want. The one thing I'm going to do to polish it up, I'm going to come down to my button label down here, and I'm going to put help me get started. That way the text, instead of just try it, is a little more descriptive. It says help me get started. And if we want to add one more other piece of flair, in my buttons computation layer, I can add a reset label that says, okay, I got this. Close quotations. And what that's going to do is allow me to turn it off. If I see that and I say, oh, okay, no, I know what to do. I can say, okay, I got this, and start typing, and then we'll be good to go. So with that, you can get that initial text sync in there, add in those sentence stems or frames if you want to put in some fill-in-the-blank pieces that students could go and do, and you can really add those extra supports. So if you have any questions or other things you'd like to see, put it in the comments. Thank you guys for watching so much, and happy Desmosing.